Marketing Manager for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our Maximize HR Efficiencies using Sage Time and Attendance as Sage OrgPlus RealTime webinar presented by Greg from Insperity. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise down. However, you can submit questions at any time throughout the webinar. To submit a question, look for the question section in your GoToWebinar pod on the right side of your screen. We will try to answer questions throughout the presentation. However, we may keep a few of them for the end of the presentation depending on the subject. We are recording this presentation and it will be distributed to all attendees as well as absentees tomorrow. And then lastly, please take a moment at the end of the presentation to take our short survey. It'll help us better understand your current needs, your future needs, and how we can help you find the right solution moving forward. So with that said, thanks for attending. As a reminder, SWK is very active on all of our social media channels. We're always pushing out updates, news, legislation updates, everything to do with your software as well as your HR needs. So please follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on everything that we're up to and also get some really valuable news that you can take back to your team. So without further ado, Insperity has put together a really great presentation for you today. So then we'll get started. Greg, I'm going to pass the presentation over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. And 1 second here. And are you able to see my screen here, Elaine?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. Just getting rid of the GoToWebinar box. All right, excellent. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction and welcome everybody. So as Elaine said, we're going to be going through Sage Time and Attendance and Sage OrgPlus RealTime and how it can benefit your business. We will be going into the product itself to give you a little bit of a deeper dive, but we do have a few slides to just run through that give you some explanation rather on what those products are and what they solve. So what our agenda will be for today, if I can get my screen to work. 1 second here, it just stopped on me. All right, there we go. So we're going to run through explaining who Insperity is and how our solutions can benefit your business. We're going to do a quick overview on who is Insperity along with a brief history. We're going to do a short dive into OrgPlus RealTime. We're then going to do a deeper dive into Sage Time and Attendance because there's a lot more complexities around that. So by the end of this presentation, we hope to arm you with some great information that can help you and your company be more successful. So a little bit about Insperity. Since 1986, Insperity has been showing companies how to harness the power of HR to improve their business success. So we've grown from 2 people sharing a one-room office to a $3.3 billion company with more than 60 offices and 3,300 employees across the country. So today we're one of the most comprehensive HR service providers, and we're still innovating. You know, as you can also see here in the slide, we were endorsed by Sage in 2012, but long before that, Insperity and Sage had a relationship that goes all the way back to actually the early 90s. So we've been hand in hand with Sage for a long time. So we're going to get into what is OrgPlus RealTime by Insperity. So OrgPlus RealTime is the world's number one organizational charting software. Insperity OrgPlus helps you build a solid organizational structure that ensures your workforce is aligned and set up for success. Web-based organizational charting software can help you model and plan for changes as well as track key metrics in real time so you can be sure that your people and business goals are always aligned. You can quickly create professional organizational charts in less time. You can import your data to ensure your charts are accurate and always up to date. So if you're using HRMS, Sage 100, Sage 300, we can pull all of that data into OrgPlus RealTime, all your employee information, their compensation, performance information, etc. So you can then choose from a variety of publication options from Word, HTML, navigable, that's a tough word to say, PDF and PowerPoint. You can publish your charts to the internet and, network drive or just email distribution. So you're also able to take advantage of the in-the-cloud infrastructure with no desktop hardware, a limited initial investment, and compatibility with pretty much any browser out there. So you can easily create your charts with drag and drop functionality. So to give you an idea of some of the customers that are using OrgPlus RealTime today, some of them are giants like Boeing and Costco. Some are smaller, such as long-term healthcare. There's a few of those. We really run the gamut from companies with 50 employees up to 35,000, 40,000, something like that. So it's scalable. It can grow with your business. So it's HR metrics at your fingertips. In many companies today, decisions are made in a boardroom or meetings where organizational charts are made using drawing tools like Visio, and then they're passed around and scribbled on. That's not real strategic. Tactically, you can solve that need, but strategically that's limiting. So being able to build or to visualize your HR data helps you proactively plan for now and the future. The dynamic org chart, it's going to give you hard evidence of how your teams are divided, where salaries are spent, and where responsibilities are centered. So what you're seeing on the screen here is your basic organizational chart. This is just imported, and this is one of the favorite views that people use. There's a lot of other views that you can utilize in the system, and I'll show you a couple others here. So you have the ability to visualize some KPIs. So you can see tenure, whether they're a key employee, their last promotion, their salary grade. So a lot of different information that you can display. So you can set up these views that are important to your company for measuring these key performance indicators. The data is going to be available at a glance so you can make better decisions. The dynamic org chart functionality can help you discern ahead of time when there's a lack of experience in a particular department, which that happens. You can identify a tenured employee to transfer into that area so that the newer staff member can be recruited into a department elsewhere. So you can very quickly make decisions when you're looking at moving people around who's going to be the best fit. If your company operates from multiple locations, the org chart program can help you optimize the composition of the teams across the organization. So you may have someone underutilized at location A who would be okay with going over to location B for a short term to work on a project. But how do you identify that person? This will help you identify those people. So, at the end of the day, what is it? It's a dynamic organizational chart program that allows you to easily drag and drop roles to build hypothetical management structures ahead of time. If you were going through anticipated growth or at the end of a major project where you may be letting some people go, or, reduction in force, of course, you can very quickly plan and model and drag and drop to see how that's going to impact headcounts, how that's going to impact salary budget goals, et cetera, et cetera. If you pull in performance information, so if you have a performance rating system, you could pull that in as well, so you can get even more granular into those details. So being able to discern, if you have the right employee counts or identify departments that need more or fewer resources, for example, all of that is at your fingertips. Last thing that I think is really, really beneficial is if you happen to be going through mergers and acquisitions, having been through that myself and having had many customers go through that, this is a very powerful tool where you can plan and show what the new company will look like so that you can identify redundant positions, meet headcount and budget targets, and more importantly, keep top talent for the new organization. So succession planning is just a quick thing. Not too many people use it, but The succession planning tool helps companies identify the organization's key roles. So CEO, someone in IT, VP of HR, whatever those key roles are, to determine high potential employees who can fill those roles in the event of a vacancy. So succession planning allows up to 10 internal or external candidates to be added to each key position, and a success plan can be shared with the other users. So I'm going to pause there. Helene, has there been any questions that came in?
I do not see any that have come in, but
Okay.
I'm happy to interrupt you if anything does.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Just wanted to give everyone a chance to breathe, because I know everyone's on the edge of their seats. So, all right. So let's talk about time and attendance, and then we will get into the product. So what is time and attendance? Sage Time and Attendance by Insperity. So it's a self-monitoring web-based system that allows users to sit back as Sage Time and Attendance holds their employees accountable for everyday accuracy and dependability. Companies are able to collect time online with web punching or on the road via mobile devices, telephony, where they dial a phone number to punch in and out. We could do biometrics, badge-based clocks, or any combination thereof. We can even do geo-fencing and geo-tracking, so you can see where the employees are when they're punching if you have a distributed workforce. From there, your supervisors and managers can receive alerts for impending overtime conditions, so they can make proactive scheduling changes before overtime hours hit payroll. So if you're in one of the numerous states where overtime is after 40, you can set it up an alert that starts flagging people when they hit 38 hours. If you're your managers may be in a position to tell that person to go home early before they go into overtime, or at the very least, your managers will know that the overtime is occurring if you're alerting on that. So at least they're making informed decisions as opposed to waiting till payroll is run and then finding out, 2 weeks ago we had X amount of overtime. So it's real-time alerting. All the business rules, so how you handle, again, overtime, for example, shift premiums if they have them, lunch rules, tardiness, early ins, early outs, yada, yada, yada. I can go on and on. That's all set up within the system. So you got to take that burden of trying to figure out, what to do with each punch. That's all automated within the system. So finally, the employees and managers, they have a intuitive self-service experience. So that's going to help your employees and managers with their day-to-day activities. So how it integrates with Sage is one of the more common questions people have. So this diagram does a real good job of kind of painting that picture. So here you have your Sage product, whether it's, again, Sage 100 or HRMS or whatever it happens to be. Typically, once a day, we do a refresh of all employee data. So all of your demographics, your code tables, if there's a change in employment status, that's all pulled into Sage Time and Attendance. From there, the employees that happen to be hourly, you probably are going to want them to punch in and out. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different ways to do that, from a badge-based clock or a finger biometric. They can punch in via the WebPunch module, which is very popular, mobile, an antique BlackBerry. I really need to update that. But there's also a timesheet entry mode, and I'm going to show you that when we get into the product. More and more companies are starting to have their salaried, exempt, and non-exempt people logging their time. So here at Insperity, everybody, all 3,300 of us, logs our time, even though the majority of us are salaried. So at the end of each pay period, I fill out a timesheet, and it's just accountability. But I fill it out, I approve my time card, then my manager goes in and reviews it and further approves it. That way payroll knows that Greg Peterman's time is appropriate. I should get my salary. There are no issues. So it's just accountability and compliance. So we take it to an extreme, but we are seeing the trend that more and more companies are having their salaried staff also logging timesheets. So we have built-in scheduling, and then we also have advanced scheduling. So if you happen to be in retail or long-term care or somewhere where you need kind of an on-demand skill set to fill a certain role, and you have a lot of transient staff and a lot of part-timers and whatnot, that's where the advanced scheduling comes into play. But the core scheduling is pretty robust. In most cases, that's going to be adequate. So when we pull in the punches, we can compare the information, see tardies, absenteeism, somebody who left early, all of that information. So there's no guesswork. It's right there in black and white, and you can see it. Now, at the end of the pay period, assuming you want to use the approvals, you can have your employees approve time, their own time cards, if they have access to a kiosk. And you also can have your supervisors further approve the time cards. Once that's done, whoever's responsible for running payroll can tell Sage Time and Attendance to go ahead and push that data into your payroll module of choice. So that's going to pass all your calculated hours, benefit hours, given dollars, etc. So hopefully that gives you a little idea. Sure.
One attendee is asking how this ties into project management and also job cost tracking and estimating.
Okay. I'm trying to decide if we should hold that one till the end, because it's kind of a loaded question. It comes down to what we need to track and how we want to track it. And I really want to answer it, but I need a little more detail around that question. So if we can, I'd like to maybe address that as a one-off, and then get,
okay.
Yeah. So
I'm happy to give you the asker's contact information, so you guys can take it offline. Okay. And then
yeah, I just need to get a little idea of what. Go ahead.
And then the follow-up question on cost tracking and estimating, that goes along as well with wanting to take it off online.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So it just. I just want to have a quick discussion on it. I can give you a generic answer, but the generic answer may be more confusing depending on how you're set up and what you're looking to accomplish. So, all right. So just like with OrgPlus RealTime, show you some of the Sage Time and Attendance customers that are on the system. Blaine's Farm and Fleet, which is a big retail place. Medieval Times, if anyone wants to have dinner and wants some jousting. Hospice care, long-term care facility. We have manufacturing, Goodwills. There's a ton of companies. So we tried to just give a nice smattering of these. So really any industry is a good fit. There are a few exceptions to that. If you are doing one person out on a job site, collecting that time for that one person can get rather expensive. So that may be where we might not be the best fit. But that's, again, something that would need to be discussed. Data collection, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Again, you can see the various time clocks and everything. As you would imagine, to punch in, you put in your ID and say, I'm punching in, or you swipe your badge, whatever the case may be, or if you're using WebPunch, which I'll show you. So really, you have a lot of options. So from here, why don't we get into, and I forgot to update this slide. We were going to have Glenn Pearson here to help us with the presentation today, but unfortunately he's out sick. So, Helene, I just changed the screen over. Are you seeing the WebPunch screen?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. All right. So what I'm showing here is a WebPunch. So Dave is an hourly person. He happens to have access to a PC, let's say in the break room, or maybe there's a tablet there. So he has the ability to punch in and out within the system here. So he can do his in for day or in and out for lunch. He can also do a transfer, and some of your transfers may be a simple thing. He's going to be moving from assembly to working on circuit boards in this company. So you can do some basic job tracking. Obviously, this is really not set up as in-depth project management, but you can do some of that. So For example, right there, Dave has now transferred his time to doing the circuit boards. Whatever buttons you need can be, this can be customized. If you want to just do in for day and out for day and do an auto lunch deduction, we can do that. If you want to add in break time, not as common to have people punching in and out for breaks nowadays, but you could add that as well. We even have a through punch module. So if you have a group of people all working on a line, the shift or the line supervisor can log all of those people on and off or in and out for the day or on and off certain jobs as a group of people. So a lot of functionality with the WebPunch. Again, Sage time and attendance is completely web-based. So all you really need is a browser. So whether it's on your phone, a tablet, a Mac, a PC, a Chromebook, as long as you have a browser and you can hit the site, then you're good to go to use the system. So let's expand on what some of the things are that Dave can do. So I'm logged in as Dave here. Dave, again, is an hourly employee. So the first thing Dave gets to see is any alerts that have to do with his time card. Most companies choose to only show the employee alerts that call for action. So we could show that Dave was tardy, or if he had too long of a lunch, or things like that. But take action. We really figure that in most cases, it's when there's a missing punch. We want Dave to see that so that Dave can take action now. So Dave sees he has a missing punch. He can drill into his own time card for that day, and it's going to show him all of his punches. So he's able to see when he started, went out to lunch, back from lunch, and he forgot to punch out for the day. And this was on the 1st. So Dave has the ability to then go down to the requests, and if he remembers what time he punched out, or should have punched out, we have a unique feature that allows your employees to request that punch be fixed. So I could show that, but in most cases, our customers choose, as long as they have email access, our customers choose to have that alert emailed to the employee. So those of our staff that are hourly here at Insperity, they get an email if they have a missing punch. And they can click right on that email link and they can put in the request information for that punch all through the email. So then they can say, okay, I'm missing an out per day. To have all this information already populated in the email, and they can put in what time it was. Then he left at, let's say, 5 p.m. and then go ahead and submit it. Then the manager, when they log into the system, can review that request. They can look at Dave's time card and make sure that that sounds legit. Maybe the manager saw him leave at 4, and he's saying he left at 5. Not uncommon to have somebody fib when they left early. So Dave has the ability to interact with his time card. If you don't want to give this level of access where he's getting emails, again, he can do it right in the system. It can show him. If you don't want him messing with missing punches at all, you can go a more traditional route, which is where your supervisors can look in the system and see what's going on, and they can chase down Dave. The industry's shifting though, and we're really trying to put the burden on the employees. I mean, they're all big boys and girls, and getting them to take accountability for their own time card is where the industry has really shifted. Why should I, as a manager, have to chase after Dave? He's not going to get paid properly, so it's his problem to work with us. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. There's a few other things you can do in the system. I've mentioned salaried staff. Whoops, I don't have that screen open. One second here. I meant to open this. This takes a second to load. So I mentioned timesheets. So if you wanted, you could have your salary staff filling out a timesheet. So they can, just put in 8 hours each day. You may allow them to just put in their own PTO, for example. So here at Insperity, I don't have to request time. I can just put it in. I obviously need to notify my manager. So, but they fill this timesheet out at the end of the pay period and go ahead and save it. And then the next step would be to approve their time card, which I could show you how that works as well. But one thing I haven't shown you is the ability to request time off. And that's a very, very popular feature. So in the system, Dave can look up his balances, which of course you can see them right here, but if we wanted to drill into details, he can get to it. But let's say he wanted to request a day off. He can come into time off requests. It tells who it's going to be going to. And he can add the plus button and say he wants to take, let's do that. Let's take the 11th and the 14th off. Puts in his reason and now submit the request. At that point, Teresa would receive an email saying that she has a request for time off pending. She can approve that request right from within the email, or if she wants to look at some trends and make sure that there's adequate coverage, she can log in and view that coverage to make sure that Dave can, in fact, take those days off. Dave, in the meantime, can see the status of the approvals. So he has one that has been approved. We have the one we just did, hasn't been answered, and there's one that's declined. So the manager can always decline it and put their own notes in, saying, no, I'm going to need you on Monday, but you can have Friday off. The employee can modify that request and resubmit it. All right, let's jump in as a supervisor. So as I mentioned earlier, supervisors do have their own self-service, if you will. So when Carrie logs in, all of her direct reports are going to be showing in the alert section, any issues. So approaching premium means they're about to go into overtime. There's an early out, lunch too long, late in, etc. Here's that missing punch of Dave's. So Carrie's definitely going to know there's a missing punch. She can go and fix it if she's talked to Dave. Ideally, again, Dave has either put in a request or received the email and modified the time. So now Carrie would just have a request for that she disapproves. Behind the scenes with this information, we can also track attendance. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. But by attendance tracking, what I really mean is occurrences. And that's another trend that we're seeing ramp up more and more. And that is where if an employee is late, let's say they get a half point. If they're absent, they get 1 point. They took too long of a lunch, they get a half point. And let's say when they hit a 10-point threshold in a 90-day rolling period, they get a written warning or a verbal warning. They hit 12 points, they get a written warning. And what it does is levels the playing field. It makes sure that every manager is treating their employees the exact same way. I'm not going to yell at Dave for being tardy and then not yell at Sandra for being tardy because I'm not going to be flagged on those situations. They haven't hit that threshold where they need to be talked to yet. So again, to make sure everyone's being treated fairly. The opposite of that, though, that a few of our customers have let us know about is they've been able to identify problems with managers. So if you take two departments, and let's say both departments have 10 people, so I'm the manager of one of them, Helene's manager of another one. So under me, there's, let's say, 15, issues with attendance. And under Helene, there's only 6 in the same period. Well, why is that? It could be because the time clock is too far away and the employees have to walk a long ways from, to get to the time clock. It's possible. It could be a lack of morale. It could be maybe the staff themselves are just worse in my group. But you can infer a lot of information from that. It could be that I'm kind of a jerk as a manager. So it does allow you to see where maybe you do have an issue. Maybe it's worth talking to Greg and finding out what's going on there before it becomes a real issue. And the other part of it is you can do perfect attendance. And that's a really nice thing to do for employees. So you're going to identify people who are struggling to manage them, to hopefully get them to do better. But you also can track perfect attendance. So let's say Nathan, he hasn't had any attendance infractions in 30 days. You can be notified of that, and maybe he gets a pizza brought in for lunch, or the front parking spot, or whatever it is. You can do anything you want with that, but you want to be able to identify those people who are doing a great job and keep them. And so when you combine your time and attendance data along with the OrgPlus data, which you can merge time and attendance into OrgPlus RealTime, so you could visualize all of that as well. Again, you don't want to lose Nathan. He does a great job. He's here every day, but that Greg guy is a slacker. So by setting up a point system, you can quickly identify that information. Whether you choose to enforce, your points policy is up to you, but we strongly encourage companies to consider putting at least a basic points tracking system in. All right, a little bit of a tangent there. So we look in employee requests now as the supervisor, and we can see that we have various requests in here. So here's the time off one from Dave. If I have questions, I can drill into it. Otherwise, I can go ahead and just approve it right here. Again, keep in mind, I'm going to get an email when Dave requested that. So I could come here and do it, but I probably got an email sitting in my inbox this morning when I came in and drinking coffee. I reviewed it and hit approve within that email, so I wouldn't even see this. So again, we're trying to take it that nobody needs to log in unless there's an issue. So that's the ideal world. As a manager, I don't look at it till the end of the pay period unless I get an email saying I need to look at something. That's what the alerts are all about. So hopefully we take a lot of the guesswork away, and we do not need managers to go in and mine data. We don't want them hunting and pecking, trying to find issues within the system. So we will notify of those. As a manager, Terry also is an employee, so Terry can do her own time off requests, of course. So you can do both as an employee and as a supervisor at the same time. Now, a lot of people still want to see reports, believe it or not. I'm kind of being facetious there. So there are a few reports available in the system. Last count was about 200 of them, so which can be overwhelming. So what we do is we would work with you during the implementation to identify the key reports that you feel you need as an administrative user, or maybe somebody in finance wants to get a wages report once a week. We can set them up that's the only thing they can see and do. The point is we're going to set up the reports so that only the reports that are needed are going to be available to the users. From an admin standpoint, you can have access to all of them, but again, we usually will identify that handful that you really need. So a couple popular reports. So this one, let me blow that up a little bit. So what we're seeing on this one is a summary report for payroll. So it's called a payroll transfer report, but it's a very, very valid report for even managers. I said to summarize by department, so I can see the total hours broken out by pay type, summarized under the departments. So here's my department totals. Again, finance, you can see all that data. So it's a nice, easy report, but why go in and run a report instead? If you know you're going to need this report every Friday, we can automate that. So again, I come in the morning, get to my desk and open up my email, and I can have any alerts that are needed, like a missed punch. I can have a request sitting there in my email, and I can also have this report that I need every Friday. So that's going to be automated and already sent to you. So again, you don't normally need to go in and run reports, but of course you can, as I'm showing you here. Another real popular report is, and I just ran this for one employee, but this is a time card or a timesheet daily hours report. So this breaks down every single punch, the start times, stop times, the hours, how they were broken out. If there was any overtime, you would see that. If you're doing shifts, you're going to see, what shift they're working on. You can add wages on here as well, so you can get, even more granular on that detail. Again, we're going to work with you on those reports. If anyone's interested in getting a better idea of what reports do come with the system, we have a reports book that is pretty massive, but it does give an example and a quick explanation of what each report is. So if you want that, just let us know and I'd be happy to send that out. So the next piece is the ability to analyze data as a supervisor. So I can come in here and I can look at, if I can click properly, I can look at my information that's coming in from HRMS. So, or whatever it is, HRMS, just, Sage 100, 300, whatever. So I can look at all this information. I can see the active employees within the system. I can see any new hires, any terminated as well. So this is just a nice snapshot of what's going on, pulled directly from your HR or payroll system of choice. We can look at hours and wages in here, which is another very, very popular, takes a little bit longer to run, but so we can get into all of the various pay types that are being paid out by hours. So you can look at what's being paid by shifts. You can even drill down into, your individual jobs and divisions here. So that's a pretty popular one. You can go back. So if you want to look at that in the previous pay period, or you want to go back to 6 months ago, the data is all in the system. It's just up to you on how much you want to allow users to drill. So, for Terry, we have it set up pretty loose. You can go back to 2015. Obviously, for a manager, you would not do that, but all that data is here and you can get to it in real time. You can also go to the approval screen at this point and see where we are as far as the approvals go. This is not something that's interactive. It's just a quick dashboard for the manager to pull up, because the approval screen does take a second to pull up. So a lot of times the manager will pull this up. Let's say approvals need to be done by noon. Terry may pull this up at 9 in the morning and see that none of her employees have. So send a quick email out or go out and yell at them out on the shop floor that they need to approve, if that's how you want to have it set up. But ultimately, all of these tools that I've shown you are really designed to make sure and that's to get your employees paid accurately and in compliance with state and federal regulation. So we will take into account all the state laws. So California has a lunch penalty plus the overtime after 8 hours in a day. Washington has a different kind of lunch penalty or a lunch situation as well. So we're going to make sure that you're set up so that your employees are being paid correctly, which is why we recommend using the approval screen. So you can get into approving in a lot of different ways in the system. We do typically encourage that a manager, who if the employees don't have access to employee self-service, we usually will encourage that the manager, prints off a report to go and talk to their employees and have them sign off on the time cards. That's not always the case. So it's really up to you how you want to do it, but you do have a lot of different options here. So what we end up doing,
one question.
Is, yeah.
Actually two. So can you set your close date for payroll? Is one question.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm following it, but I'm going to guess at it, and that is that first of all, you can run any pay frequency you want, and you can have multiple pay frequencies, biweekly and semi-monthly. As far as the payroll dates, that's all up to you. It's all configurable. So I'm not sure if that's answering that question, but tentatively, yes, you can set that.
Okay, and then you kind of answered this too just now. The other question was, when do you have to close your pay period? So it sounds like that's completely up to whatever pay schedule that they select, and it's manageable within the system.
Yes. So, and that's absolutely a step you need to take. And I was going to get there here in just a moment. So,
okay.
Very good timing on that one. So let me show the approval screen real quick and show you what some of the options are. At the very least, most of our customers end up using the approvals at least at the supervisor level. Ideally, they would at the employee level as well. Now, obviously none of the employees have approved their time. Ideally, I'd see that everyone's approved their time here. As a manager, I can review all the hours in the system. If there's any overtime that may have occurred, I can drill into that and see what's going on. Anyone who was out on, take time off, I can also look at what their wages would be right from here. But ideally, I've been doing all that throughout the week because, I've gotten emails where I need to log in and look at stuff. So this hopefully is more of a formality, but it is that last check and balance. So let's pretend that we have employees that rock, and this is what we see. And maybe there's one employee who didn't approve. That's manageable. Here at Insperity, again, we have an automated email that goes out every Thursday telling us to make sure every other Thursday telling us to make sure we get our time in and approve it by end of day on Friday. So that's just an automated email you can have. But it is a nice reminder as an employee. Now, as a supervisor, again, I've looked at all of this. I feel good about it. Great. I'm just going to go ahead and supervisor approve all, and then I save it. Now, at this point, the time cards get locked down. All right. Your supervisors would no longer be able to go in and change it, which is kind of a big deal. As people running payroll, you're going to see that these have all been approved, and the last thing you need is for someone to then go in and modify something. So, rest assured, it does lock it down. I did want to call attention to this, though, Dave. We never did actually fix his missing punch. So it's not going to let you approve time when there's a serious issue with the time card. So missing punch is one of the biggest ones. There are a couple others, and it's pretty granular stuff. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it. So everything stops because Dave's not going to be paid correctly. So at this point, I need to find Dave and find out what time he punched. I can deal with why he didn't request that punch or why he didn't come to me sooner. But we need to get that fixed. So I'd go and fix it, then we go on to the next step. So that next step is to answer the question that was asked. And that is, first of all, you need to export your time. Now, you could do it by pay groupings. You can do it for the entire company. We have some companies that have multiple EINs, and they'll set them up under one company umbrella, but then org level 1 would be company A, org level 2, org level 1 would be what the company name is. So you'd have company A and company B, for example. You can slice and dice this in a lot of ways. I can tell it I only want to export the school music group, or I only want to export a department. I could even drill into I only want to export one person. So if you needed to run a one-off paycheck, you could. It's probably just as easy to print off your time card and just key it in, but you can get that granular. So once you've set up all your filters and everything, you just need to tell it to export the hours. That's going to create the file that then your payroll choice is going to pull in. And typically, you're not in a hurry to close the pay period. So, the pay period may have ended on Friday. Here it is Tuesday, and you just exported payroll. You don't need to close out the pay period yet. Everything's locked down. No one can make changes. But you might want to leave it open, till the checks go out. So you could, let's say they get paid on Friday. You may not close out the pay period until then. The employees are already working in the new pay period. So it doesn't have to be closed right now. The critical thing with closing out the pay period is you have to do it before you can export payroll for the next pay period. So it won't let you forget to close out the pay period. And that's a pretty quick process as well. But by leaving it open, it just gives you that ability. If an employee gets their check and something is wonky, you'll want to make sure you account for it. If you ever get an audit, that way everything is in the system. And the audit trail does capture everything. So who did what, when did they do it, what computer did they do it from based on the IP address, what was it and what did they change it to? That is all tracked, and that is kept in the system indefinitely. There is no cap on how much data you can save. We do have customers that have been with us for 20 years and haven't purged the data. They just haven't had a need to. So especially with disk space nowadays on servers, that's not an issue. So that sort of puts a bow on it. I mean, that's getting the employees paid. There's a lot of other things that can be done in the system. Like I said, running reports and whatnot. There's security set up. There's all the stuff behind the scenes that as an administrative user, you'd be shown how to do, including global updates, for example. But that's typically more of an implementation related piece. So anticipating this question, the implementation typically takes between 8 and 12 weeks. The reason for that is you're doing something that impacts every employee, or at least every hourly employee. They're going to be punching differently than what they're used to. So allowing time for that change management is a huge part of the implementation. And that's why we could do it in a week. You know, if you had the availability and didn't have a job and gave us your undivided attention, we can get it done in a week. Nobody can do that because you can't deal with the change that fast. And inevitably, when you bring in an automated system or switching from one to another, you end up making some changes to your policies too. And so we allow time for that. So 8 to 12 weeks, that does all of the configuration, the setup with the integration, training on how to use the system. We typically like to do train the trainer, to do the supervisor training and employee training, but we offer that as well if that's what you want. So with OrgPlus RealTime, that implementation is more like, well, elapsed time from start to finish is less than a week. It just typically takes us a couple weeks to engage. Okay. So that kind of at the end of the presentation. Are there any other questions that have come up, Pauline?
Nothing new has come up.
Okay.
Just reminder everyone, we have an expert with us now, so if you have any questions, don't be shy. Please feel free to type them in, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. I'll let you know if anything comes in, Greg.
Okay. Will you send me the contact information for the person that asked about the, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Job costing and estimating. So, all right. Well, I really appreciate everyone's attention here, and I hope that everyone got something out of this. Happy to do a one-on-one deeper dive. We would work with SWK to coordinate that, and basically what we'd want to do is a quick needs analysis to understand what you're doing today, what you're hoping to accomplish. From there, we can do a tailored demonstration of the product to show you how you would use it, which very much is different than what I've shown you. I've shown you just the software and what it does. During a demonstration, we would really want to tailor it to show you how you would use it, how your company would benefit. So that's a typical process. So if anyone's interested in that, please get a hold of your rep with SWK, and that's about it. So thank you, everyone, once again.
That concludes the webinar. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.